Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Snort, snort, snort.
Cody.
Drip, snort, snort.
I got the drip. Go. Okay, so getting back on topic now. This morning, the Game of the Year award nominees were announced, or I should say the Game Awards nominees were announced. This covered various topics. Of course, you always have your Game of the Year contenders, Game of the Year nominees. But in addition, you have all of your minor categories as well. And before we actually get to the games that are nominated, I would just like to read through the various categories so you guys know what they actually do at the Game Awards. So, here you go. I'm actually going to start from the bottom. And I'm going to read all the way up. These are all the categories, all right, that they do at the Game Awards, all right? So, from the bottom up, ready? Best Esports Event, Best Esports Coach, Best Esports Team, Best Esports Athlete, Best Esports Game. They really love their esports now at the Game Awards, apparently. It's interesting. Wasn't aware that it was that big of a deal. Okay. Content Creator of the Year. Always a hilarious topic because usually people don't know 90% of the people that are nominated for that category. You never even heard of them. Most Anticipated Game. Best Adaptation. Best Multiplayer. Best Sports and Racing. Best Sim and Strategy Game. Best Family, Best Fighting, Best RPG, Best Action Adventure, Best Action, Best VR or AR, Best Mobile Game, Best Debut Indie Game, but also Best Independent Game. So a debut independent game and also a separate topic for all independent games. Okay. Best Community Support, Best Ongoing Game, Games for Impact, Innovation in Accessibility, Best Performance by a game actor, basically, Best Audio Design, Best Score and Music, Best Art Direction, Best Narrative, Best Game Direction, and Game of the Year. Okay? Pretty crazy. It's a lot of topics. It's a lot of categories. They take it seriously, I guess. Or do they? Because here's the deal, all right? The Game Awards, I hate to say it, all right, have two fatal flaws every single year. And as much as I feel that Jeff Keighley is very well-intentioned with his show, and he's really trying to make games professional. I mean, look what he's done in the last several years with Summer Game Fest. As E3 was on the decline, he basically replaced E3 with his own show that's just as good. I get that he's trying to make this professional, all right? I totally get it. But the Game Awards have two critical flaws every year that I call out, but they're all just ignored as if it doesn't exist, all right? Flaw number one, all right? The Game Awards have a cutoff for what games can be nominated. So I'll give you an example, all right? And I'm not saying that this seriously would be a contender or anything, but the Game Awards only consider games up to a certain point in November. So, for example, this week, Like a Dragon Gaiden came out. Guess what game is not eligible? Right? This week, Super Mario RPG Remake comes out. It's not eligible. Guess what other game comes out next month? The Avatar game from Ubisoft. It's not eligible. Why? Because the Game Awards are run the first week of December. But that's not the end of the year. How can you have a year show, the Game of the Year awards, the Game Awards, it's supposed to be contenders for the year, but it doesn't include anything from the last month and a half to 2 months of the year. How does that make sense? It doesn't. And you might say, well, why do they do it that way? Because of advertisers. I'm not shitting you. They found during market research the best way to make money with this show is to run it the first week of December. If they ran it in January, most advertisers have already expended all of their advertising budgets for Christmas, and they don't have a lot of money to throw towards ads in January. So if they held the show in January and it was more legit for the awards, they would not make as much money. So because of money, they hold it in fucking December. Pretty stupidly greedy, isn't it? Yes. But I guess it's just business, right? Now you may say, well, that's okay, because any games that come out in like November, December will be eligible for next year. Yeah, except it's literally never happened. Go back during the history of the Game Awards and look at games that have come out around November, December that got slighted that year, and you tell me if they were ever nominated for the next year. Not once. They get forgotten. Just like games that come out at the very beginning of the year always get forgotten and never get nominated, even if they're great games, all right? I'll give you guys an example. Hogwarts Legacy was the absolute hottest game of the year this year early on in February. Everyone was playing it. Everyone was talking about it. It was a hotbed of discussion, right? Oh my God, the controversy around the game and everything. Now, admittedly, I don't think that it was the best game of the year. I actually feel that the game had flaws or whatever. But, dude, it sold tons. It was one of the best-selling games of the year. It was the biggest thing. Guess what? Literally not being discussed at Game of the Year awards at all. As if it never existed. Like the game never came out this year. Why? Because it came out in February. These awards really only start considering games around late March, April, and they only carry through till around October. And that's it. Any game that comes out November, December, January, February, it's like it doesn't exist. As if it never released. I think that's incredibly stupid. I don't think that's fair. I think it's unprofessional. But if you really want to talk unprofessional, in truth, the reason that I really find the core flaw of this show is that I just named all the categories, right? And you might say, oh, that's interesting. So how do they determine the winners? Are you ready? 120 gaming journalists and insiders vote. Okay? Gaming journalists and insiders. Not gamers. But gaming journalists and insiders are the people who vote on these categories. So you might say for yourself, well, wait a minute. If you truly look at the innovative games and the best games of 2023, why would a game, would a game like Street Fighter 6 ever be nominated for Game of the Year? Okay? Well, let's take a look. Let's actually start that discussion right now. Okay? Game of the Year nominees for 2023 are as follows. You ready for this? Here we go. These are the Game of the Year contenders for this year. Alan Wake 2. Okay, I agree on that one. I just finished it, and it was one of the most innovative games I've played in many years. It will resonate with me forever because of the innovative things it did. I love the game. One of the best narratives ever. Yes, it's definitely Game of the Year contender for me. Okay? Baldur's Gate 3. Certainly I didn't play it, but I think it's undeniable. This game, considered one of the best PC RPGs of all time. Then it carried over to PS5. People seem to love it there too. Doesn't fit my format of content, but everyone who's played it seems to agree it's outstanding. Even though I've heard many people fairly criticize it and say, actually, the final third of the game is not very good at all. That the first 2/3 are outstanding, and the final third, they kind of ran out of thoughts and ran out of ideas, and the game completely fizzles out at the end. So how it's perfect and Game of the Year, I don't know, but that's what people are saying who actually even really liked the game. Okay? Spider-Man 2. Well, after having played 25 hours of it and likely getting to the end of it today, I could say it's probably arguably the best superhero game ever made. It's got the best open world city and open world traversal I've ever seen in a video game. It's got a story that keeps you guessing with twists and turns. It's certainly not overly cliche. It takes a few risks with the plot that aren't in line with the comics or movies. Overall, very, very pleasing game. Is it the perfect game? No. I mean, it does have some annoying parts. It still has stupid MJ missions where for some reason Mary Jane is a fucking superhero even though she's really not. They have to have these progressive segments of the game that make absolutely no sense and are out of place. But for the most part, the game is very pleasing and very satisfying if you're a fan of Spider-Man, superheroes, or anything like that. And a lot of people have even been saying Spider-Man 2 may even take up the mantle as best superhero game ever from Batman Arkham City. So there you go. Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, out of all the games that are listed here, honestly, I think this is actually the one I disagree with the most. Resident Evil 4 Remake is a fine game, okay? But it's a remake. it's not necessarily a brand new game. Most of the game ideas and assets are taken from another game, and they've been modernized and updated a bit. But to me, you know, having played the original just a couple years ago and playing this one, I don't really feel like it did enough to be a Game of the Year contender, quite frankly. I mean, I loved it. I thought the game, the graphics were good. The story obviously is good. But I don't know if I believe that this should be a Game of the Year contender at all. I think out of all the ones in the Game of the Year list, I don't think this one should be in there. This is the one I kind of disagree with. You could disagree with me, and that's okay. But this is the one that I kind of have a little bit of an issue with, and I think that's a little off base. Okay? Super Mario Brothers Wonder. I wholeheartedly agree. Apparently, some people are up in arms about this. I agree with this. Super Mario Brothers Wonder is the best 2D Mario game in like 25 years. It's better than New Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers Wii, Super Mario Brothers Wii U. It's better than all of them. All right? It's got innovation. Almost every stage has something new added. Multiple new power-ups. These wonder abilities that change the stages completely. It really is the most imaginative Mario game that I have seen in ages. Okay? Really. I think it's great. And what's funny is a lot of people are so bigoted against Nintendo and Mario. Oh, that's a kiddie game. How could you consider a 2D platformer, right, to be such a Game of the Year contender? Because I'm not an idiot who has a closed mind and thinks that things that are older are worse, you know? Yes, it is a 2D platformer. It definitely follows all of the constraints of a 2D platformer game, which started in the 1980s, right? But that doesn't mean it's bad. Just because you personally don't like it doesn't mean it's not good. It's pretty much best in class for 2D platformers. So why shouldn't it be a Game of the Year contender? It's got high production quality. It's got length. It's got value. It's got innovation. It's got everything in it you want from a great game. Oh, it's Nintendo. It's for little kids. No, you're just stupid. What a dumb, ignorant, closed-minded thing to say. Just because you personally don't like it doesn't mean it's not good, right? And then lastly, and this one I absolutely, positively knew would be nominated, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I knew this one would be there. Do you want to know why? Gaming journalists. This game was like so heavily pushed by gaming journalists this year that I knew it was going to be a Game of the Year contender. But it's hilarious because a lot of people strongly criticized the game and said it's exactly the same map as Breath of the Wild. Yes, there's an underworld and an aerial world, but it's the same game, and all they really did is they added a couple new dungeons, and they added in this building mechanic. But it's still Breath of the Wild. It really feels like an expansion to Breath of the Wild, right? Now, I think that is kind of a short-sighted way to look at the game. It definitely has a lot of innovation and things in it that's different from Breath of the Wild. But, you know, I can see both sides of the fence. Let's put it that way. I can totally see people saying one way or the other way. I get it. Personally, I liked the game, but I wasn't in love with it like a lot of other people. I certainly felt like there was a lot of padding and a lot of unnecessary content because they wanted the game to feel like a 100-hour game, when in reality it was around a 40-hour game with 60 hours of shit you just never need to do. So, you know, it is what it is. I still enjoyed the game a lot and enjoyed my playthrough of it, okay? So when I'm looking at all of these games, right? So let's do it again. Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Mario Wonder, and Tears of the Kingdom, right? Well, wait a minute. I don't get it. Why is Street Fighter 6 not in there? Street Fighter 6 is the best fighting game in a decade. It's got everything that everyone wanted. It's got better graphics, better gameplay, insanely good online connections, way better, best in class than any other fighting game before it. It's got a wide cast of characters. It's got all awesome modes, right? You've got your online community mode with the lobbies where you can make your own avatar and fight avatars against each other. You got a story mode that's unprecedented in a fighting game, open world. You can play for 20 to 30 hours. It's got everything any fighting game player would ever want, right? Why would Street Fighter 6 not be nominated for Game of the Year? Here's why. Because the flaw of these awards is that they're nominated by gaming journalists. Ladies and gentlemen, gaming journalists are not representative of the average gamer. They're just not. It's their job to cover certain games and write articles about them. okay? Just on the merits of that, they can't play as many games as an average gamer, because every game they play, they have to be analyzing and writing articles and shit about. You understand? So since that's their job, they don't have time to play as many games as most other people. They actually have to play more in depth on the games they play, but they don't have the ability to play a wide variety of games, okay? Now, here's the funny part about this. Do you know that most gaming journalists don't play fighting games? Yep. It's a fact. If you do the math, it's something like, the statistic is something like 80% of gaming journalists never play a fighting game. That it's a very small niche of gaming journalists who cover the fighting game genre. So, if only 20% of the people who are eligible to nominate games for Game of the Year have played a fighting game this year, how would a fighting game ever be eligible for Game of the Year? Right? However, what are the games that most gaming journalists did play? Well, you know, the long narrative-based ones. At least I dabbled in it. Even if I didn't play it to the end, I dabbled in it, right? Because it's the game that everyone else in the office was playing. This is, you know what I mean? So, that's the problem here, is that just like you'll never get a racing game in there. You seriously will never get a first-person shooter in there. You'll never will. You will only get RPGs, action games, you know, every once in a while a Nintendo game, first-party Nintendo game, that kind of stuff. That's all you will ever get as Game of the Year, because those are the more mainstream categories. And you'll get those every year nominated for Game of the Year, and everything else will get swept under the rug. Even if it's best in class, absolutely the best you've ever seen. Street Fighter 6 is literally the best fighting game in 10 years. But no one cares because, oh, it's a fighting game, so no way it could be Game of the Year. It's bullshit. And again, it's just sad. It's not a fair assessment. I'll give you another assessment, okay? I know for a fact that some of the people who get to vote for Game of the Year haven't played most of these games. Here's an example, all right? There's people who are allowed to vote for all these categories who are accessibility consultants, okay? People who actually consult on games for things like blindness accessibility, audio accessibility, things like that, okay? For most of these games, like some of these aren't even accessible. To my knowledge, like Mario Wonder isn't accessible, right? It's not at all. It doesn't have any accessibility options. So if you're blind or you're hearing impaired, you can't play Mario Wonder, right? And some of these games I know for a fact did not have full accessibility options. So people who were, for example, sight impaired could not fully play Spider-Man 2. Barely could they even play it. Even though they tried to put in options, I saw some of the reviews. Like I saw Super Blind Man's review. He said you can't play it without sight assistance. There's no way you could play it. So if that's the case, and these games are not accessible to those people, why are those people voting for Game of the Year? Right? That's the problem with the Game Awards. It's completely flawed. Who should be voting for the Game Awards? People who actually played all the fucking games. Right? So you name me one gaming journalist who actually played all 6 of these games. Name me one gaming journalist who also played the other great games this year that aren't on the list. Right? And they should be the ones who nominate. And the truth is, probably 0. Because again, that's not what gaming journalism is about. With gaming journalism, you have people who work in your office or your publication who are specialists in certain things. You're the RPG person. You're the fighting game person. You're this person. You're that person. You're all specialists. If you're a specialist, you should only be an expert on the game genre you're an expert on, and that's what you should write about and review. Why the fuck are you nominating games for Game of the Year when you didn't play 90% of them? Right? It literally doesn't make sense. Okay? The whole thing is flawed. But you want to know what it is? It is an insiders, inclusive, good old boys and girls club. Meaning, if you're in the industry, oh, you know, haha, you know my buddy who I see at all the fucking press events and all the things, and we get all the shit sent to us for free by every, you know, oh, I got the new Steam Deck. Oh, I got the new fucking console for free. I got all the review copies of every game for free. Everything I get for free, right? It's that group. It's the inclusive group of golden people who are selected to be representative of the gaming community are the people who are nominating and voting on these awards. So how can you then say that this is a true Game Award show, representative of the true quality of games? You can't. Because it's just 120 people who are just a good old boys and girls club who are all nudging each other about what we liked this year, blah, 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 blah. And you'll never get games like Street Fighter 6 nominated at all. You'll never be nominated for Game of the Year because it's a completely skewed system. And you'll have years where games are nominated that make no sense and years where games win that make no sense. And there's nothing you can do about it unless the system's changed. Unless people campaign to Jeff Keighley and say, your system's insanely flawed. We don't want to know out of your friend group what your favorite game was. We actually want to know what the best game of the fucking year was. But that's all it is. It's Jeff Keighley's friend group award show. That's literally what it is. And what's hilarious about it is, all right, every year they do have a fan viewer voting poll. And literally every year they do this, and the winner is completely different from what is selected by the Game Awards as Game of the Year. It never fails. The big contentious year was the year with The Last of Us 2, where the common gamer did not love The Last of Us 2. The common gamer thought it was all right, but didn't like a lot of the things that happened with the story of the game, didn't like the game direction, and did not like all of these political agendas shoved down your fucking throat when you played the game. The fucking guy who made the game, Neil Druckmann, made it political on purpose and even had campaigns on social media to vote for his game for Game of the Year to stick it to the haters who are anti-liberal. I'm not kidding you. Yes, this all happened that year. Okay? So what ended up happening was the gamers rallied and said, well, this is bullshit. Instead, let's actually nominate and vote for the game that's the true Game of the Year. You want to know what game won? Ghost of Tsushima. A game that if you actually compare apples to apples of what was in both games, had a better story, actually had more innovative and better gameplay elements, and in a lot of ways had better graphics. But it got brushed under the rug because all Jeff Keighley's friends wanted The Last of Us 2 to win because of political agendas that year. And that's what I mean. That's the problem with the Game Awards. Okay? It's completely political. It's completely a friend club voting rather than it actually trying to credit the best games of the year, and that's sad. Now, excuse me. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, okay, I'm okay with all of these Game of the Year contenders. It sucks that I didn't get to play Baldur's Gate 3, and I can't really give you a 100% valid opinion on all these games because I haven't played Baldur's Gate. I'll tell you, I don't get why Resident Evil 4 is in there. I don't think it should be. And outside of Resident Evil 4, if you were to ask me, okay, if you could eliminate one of these games, which one would you eliminate right now? Tears of the Kingdom. So just get it the fuck out of there. You know? I would tell you, Mario Wonder, Spider-Man 2, and Alan Wake 2 have all been way better game experiences for me than Tears of the Kingdom was. Tears of the Kingdom was passably good, but it's just not resonating as something innovative or good enough. Tears of the Kingdom, in my opinion, is overrated by a lot of people, okay? But I get why it's there, you know? I can't attest to Baldur's Gate 3. There's nothing I can do about that. Honestly, if I could add a game, and this is just me off the top of my head. This is not me speaking from personal experience looking at all the games that came out this year yet. But I would say if I could outright add a game, I'd probably add Hogwarts Legacy. Even though I feel like the final third of Hogwarts Legacy was inferior and the game fizzled out and ran out of ideas and was kind of boring. I think that the first 1 to 2 thirds of the game, with its world building and its innovation of having an interactive open world Harry Potter game, it nailed it. This is the game that every Harry Potter fan has always wanted. An interactive Hogwarts, school, a town around it, and all the lore and everything around it. Why on earth would that game not be nominated for a Game of the Year contender? All right, here's another one. Why the holy hell would Lies of P not be on there? Lies of P gave us exactly what we've wanted for the longest time. Bloodborne 2. That's literally what Lies of P is. And it runs super well no matter what format you play it. It's got multiple ways to play it because of the different builds and things. It's got innovation when it comes to certain combat elements and things like that. It's exactly what everyone has wanted for essentially almost a decade. Since Sony and FromSoft wouldn't give it to us, they gave it to us. It actually has an insanely good story too. So why would Lies of P not be in there, right? And that's what I mean. Like, when you're looking at some of these games, you're like, I don't understand how Resident Evil 4 is on there. Yeah, because game journalists all played it. That's the answer. How many game journalists played Lies of P? Again, not many. Why? Because it's not a mainstream FromSoft game. If Lies of P was made by From Software, it would be on this list. But because these are game journalists who nominate these games, and Lies of P was considered an indie studio that made it, and no one really knew if it was going to be good or not a lot of game journalists played it, therefore, by default, it can't be nominated. Do you see the problem with this system? That's the problem. But if it was FromSoft, all the game journalists would have played it, and it would have been nominated for sure. You get it? So, I mean, I could keep going on and on about the flaws of this system and why it's not legit. It's bullshit, okay? Taking a look, I'm just curious, if you take a look at some of these games, let's take a look at Best RPG. So, nominees for Best RPG: Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, Lies of P. Lies of P. Lies of P is not a fucking RPG. And it's nominated for Best RPG. Do you see my problem with this system? The game journalists are so stupid, they nominated the game in the wrong fucking category. You'd have to be a moron to say that Lies of P is an RPG. You see? Sea of Stars and Starfield. Okay. How about, let's see here. How about Best Multiplayer Game of the Year? Baldur's Gate 3. Did I click on the right category? Baldur's Gate 3, Diablo 4, Party Animals, Street Fighter 6, and Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Oh! All right, let's go back to the categories. Holy fucking shit. Oh, here, this is always a great category. You ready? Best Content Creator of the Year. Ready? Iron Mouse, People Make Games, Quackity, this year nominated. Even though Quackity's been in the gaming community for how many years? This year nominated. Spreen and Cypher PK. That name rings a bell somewhat. I don't even know what kind of content they do. So I know about Quackity and Cypher PK, right? But again, you tell me, right? That's what I mean. Like, let's see here. I'm curious, like, what else? Oh, this is a good category. Best Performance. I actually enjoy this category because it takes a serious, dramatic take on games. Who's the best actor in a game this year? We've got Ben Starr for Final Fantasy 16. I'm assuming that was the main character of the game. Cameron Monaghan for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, the title character, the titular character. Idris Elba for Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. I didn't play it. I can't really attest to that. Melanie Liburd for Alan Wake 2. She played Saga Anderson. Neil Newbin for Baldur's Gate 3. I didn't play it, so I have no idea what character he played. And Yuri Lowenthal, who played Peter Parker in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. That is your nominees for Best Performance. Honestly, you know, I didn't see Idris Elba, and I didn't see Neil Newbin. If I had to pick, if I had to pick between all these, honestly, I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this one. I'd probably pick Cameron Monaghan for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, even though the game was super flawed. I think the guy's great. He does a great job as that character. He's a good actor. And he did a good job in the role. I don't think that anything in Final Fantasy 16 is worth nominating at all. Sorry. I thought Saga's Anderson's character was fine in Alan Wake 2. Personally, I actually think that the actor who played Alan Wake did a better job than her. But he's not nominated. She is for some reason. And Yuri Lowenthal, he's good as Spider-Man. But, I don't know. I just think that Cameron did a better job. So, I think Cameron Monaghan should be the best performance of the year, in my opinion. But, I don't know who's going to win that. So, This is always a great one. Games for impact. So you know what this means? Progressive games. That's exactly, they should just name it that. Like progressive liberal games. That's what it should be called, because that's all. I mean, there's no reason to not call it that. That's what it is. And there's nothing wrong with calling it that, because there should be games like this. I've always said this. There is room in video games for everything. There is. There's enough people out there, there's enough of a fan base, enough of a player base to play any kind of game. If you want to admit that your games are liberal and they're trying to be progressive, just say that. There's nothing wrong with that. Just admit it. Why call it games for impact? Why are you trying to rename it something? There's nothing wrong with just being outright of what your game is, okay? However, here's the games. A Space for the Unbound. Chance of Sonar. Goodbye Volcano High. Tchia. Terra Nil. And Venba. Oh, I see. Games literally no one played. I get it now. Never heard of a single one of those. Well, okay, I heard of Goodbye Volcano High, and we all made fun of it, and no one played it. What else do we want to look at here? Man. I don't even know what to look at here. What do you guys think we should look at? What categories? Best indie game? Best indie game of the year? Cocoon, I didn't play. Dave the Diver, I didn't play. Dredge, I didn't play. Sea of Stars, I didn't play. And Viewfinder, I didn't play. So there you go. Can't say anything about that, right?
I got the drip going. 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 It's like a faucet that's dripping. You can't make it stop. So what do you want me to do? Have a mute button that every second I'm tapping the mute button just in case I'm gonna have to clear? Like, this is what I mean, these dumb kids. This is what it is, it's dumb kids.